For over 30 years, Amanda dedicated herself to a life of quiet sacrifice. She cleaned, cooked, and cared for her family, never asking for much in return. She spent long, sleepless nights looking after her bedridden mother-in-law, Anna, while her husband and children traveled, laughed, and lived their lives, seemingly oblivious to her exhaustion. But when Amanda's world shattered, when the truth about her husband's betrayal was laid bare, everything changed. Today, I want to take you on a journey through the life of a woman who decided that enough was enough. A woman who had spent her years giving, only to find herself forgotten. This is the story of Amanda, a woman who dared to walk away and rebuild her life, no longer a bystander in her own story. Imagine, after years of selfless devotion, you're left behind. You find out your husband, the man you devoted your entire life to, has been traveling with another woman while you were caring for his family. What would you do? Would you stay? Or would you take the chance to finally put yourself first? Amanda faced this choice, and her decision sent shockwaves through her entire family. The next few years would be a battle, not just for freedom but for self-worth and redemption. It all began quietly. For Amanda, every day was a quiet rhythm of routines. She would wake up before dawn, prepare breakfast for her family, and then care for Anna, her mother-in-law, who had been bedridden for years. Amanda's life was filled with the small details that no one noticed: the extra laundry loads, the cleaning, the forgotten celebrations. Her husband, Dave, was always too busy with his work, and her children, Nelson and Daisy, grew older and more distant. And then there was Anna, who needed constant care. She couldn't move without Amanda's help. Amanda's gentle hands that helped her turn in bed, massage her aching legs, and whisper comfort in the middle of the night. It was a life of service, and Amanda did it all without complaint. But after Anna passed away, something inside Amanda changed. For the first time in over a decade, there was space to breathe, to reflect, and to notice the silence in her own life. It was supposed to be a time of relief, but instead, it became the moment she would never forget. You see, when Dave suggested a family road trip, Amanda was eager. She thought, finally, a chance for all of them to be together, to feel like a family again. She packed their bags, prepared for the journey, but as the day of departure came, everything fell apart. Dave stopped her at the door, his voice cold, detached. "There's no room in the car," he said. "You can go next time." Her son, Nelson, chimed in with a dismissive tone. "Mom, you're not young anymore. It's a long ride, and you'll just complain about your back hurting again." And just like that, her entire family drove off, leaving Amanda standing in the doorway, stunned, her heart breaking in silence. Later that day, Amanda logged onto social media and saw the photo. It was a picture of her husband and children, together with Elena, a woman from Dave's past. A woman Amanda had never met, but who had somehow become part of their family's life. They were all smiles, laughing, enjoying each other's company. While she was left behind, Amanda's world tilted. She realized that for years, while she had been hidden in the shadows of their family's life, her husband had been building a new life with Elena. And the worst part, she had been too busy, too focused on everyone else's needs, to notice what was happening. It was in that moment that Amanda made a decision that would change everything. She would no longer be the silent, invisible woman who stayed behind while the world passed her by. She would reclaim her life, her happiness, and her dignity. And so began her journey, not just to heal, but to find herself again. In the coming chapters of her life, Amanda would face her deepest fears, challenge the ones she loved, and discover just how strong she truly was. For over a decade, Amanda lived a life of quiet devotion. Every day, her world revolved around caring for her bedridden mother-in-law, Anna. The morning started early, the first light barely peeking through the curtains, as Amanda would prepare breakfast for her family and take care of all the little things that kept the house running smoothly. But it wasn't just about the chores. It was the way she held Anna's hand during the late-night hours, soothing her when the pain from old injuries kept her awake, the way she would massage Anna's legs and turn her over in bed to ensure she was comfortable. Amanda became Anna's lifeline, her only source of comfort. And yet, while Amanda was busy giving, There was something that she had stopped giving herself: attention. There were no moments for self-care, no time to enjoy a hobby or relax with friends. Her days bled into one another, a repetitive cycle of service and silence. When the rest of her family went on vacations or enjoyed their free time, Amanda stayed behind, quietly fulfilling the role that no one seemed to appreciate. It was a life lived in the shadows, as if her sacrifices were invisible, as if she didn't have the right to feel seen or cared for. I remember one afternoon when Amanda had carefully prepared a meal for the family, one she'd been planning for weeks. But when her children returned from their trip, they were too tired to sit at the dinner table. "Maybe next time, Mom," they said, not out of malice but out of routine. And in that moment, Amanda understood. No one noticed the little things she did. No one saw her efforts. It felt as if, despite the love and care she poured into her family, she was being taken for granted. There is great value in caring for those we love, in sacrificing for them, but it's just as important to care for ourselves and to feel appreciated in return. Sacrificing everything for others, without receiving love and recognition, can leave us feeling empty. It's vital to find balance, giving to others but also ensuring that we don't lose ourselves in the process. Amanda's life had been a quiet hum of routine, a life she had chosen, or perhaps one she had simply fallen into. Her days were consumed by the needs of others, and though there were no complaints, there was a growing emptiness inside her. But nothing could have prepared her for the cold shock she felt when she realized the truth. She had been left behind. It all started innocently enough. Dave, her husband, suggested a family road trip. Amanda was eager. After all, it had been so long since they had done anything together. She packed the bags, organized the itinerary, and made sure everything was ready for their adventure. But just as the moment arrived, when Amanda was standing by the door, luggage in hand, ready to embark on what she thought would be a family journey, Dave's words cut through her excitement like a knife. "There's no room in the car for you," he said, his voice cold, detached. "You can go next time." Her son Nelson chimed in, his voice as sharp as his father's. "Mom, you're not young anymore. It's a long ride, and you'll just complain about your back hurting again." Daisy, her daughter, didn't even look up as she grabbed her things and headed out the door. The family drove off, leaving Amanda standing alone, stunned, her heart heavy with the realization that she had been excluded. Later that day, as Amanda scrolled through social media, she saw it. An image of her husband and children, all smiles, posing happily alongside Elena, a woman from Dave's past. They were in a beautiful location, a scene of pure joy, while Amanda had been left behind, neglected and forgotten. Amanda's heart sank. How long had this been going on? How many vacations had they taken without her? How many moments had they shared without her presence? Her mind raced with the painful truth that she had spent years serving her family, caring for her mother-in-law, doing everything for them, and yet she was nothing more than an afterthought. She had devoted her life to a family that never truly saw her, never truly valued her. The betrayal stung in ways she hadn't expected. Amanda was the one who had put everyone else first, but it seemed like they had all forgotten the price of her sacrifice. In the eyes of her family, she was no longer a vital part of their world. This is a reality many families face, though it often goes unnoticed. The caregiver, the wife, the mother, becomes the invisible thread holding everything together. They give their time, their energy, and their love, but rarely are their efforts recognized. The emotional toll this takes can be devastating, especially when those who are supposed to appreciate the sacrifice are too caught up in their own lives to notice. A common mistake that many families make is failing to nurture the relationships that are essential for keeping the family close. They take for granted the constant work that goes into maintaining the household and the emotional labor that caregivers pour into every aspect of family life. Instead of valuing these individuals, they neglect them. It's easy to get caught up in our own lives, but we must always remember to acknowledge and appreciate the sacrifices of those around us, especially the ones who are always there for us. Amanda's story is a reminder that love and sacrifice should never be one-sided, and that those who give so much deserve to be seen, heard, and valued. Amanda's heart was heavy as she stood by Anna's bed, the woman she had cared for so selflessly for so many years, now peacefully gone. For the first time in over a decade, there was silence. A silence that felt both freeing and suffocating. The weight of her years of sacrifice seemed to lift, but in its place was an overwhelming emptiness. Amanda found herself asking, what now? In the quiet aftermath of Anna's passing, Amanda tried to focus on the one thing that had consumed her life for so long: her family. She believed that, with time, things would get better. Her family would see all that she had done for them, and finally, they would acknowledge her sacrifices. But deep down she knew better. The cracks had been forming for years, and now, in the wake of Anna's death, they were impossible to ignore. She thought back to the years spent cleaning, cooking, and caring for everyone else while neglecting her own needs. She thought about the lonely nights spent waiting for Dave to come home, the empty promises of next time, when he couldn't even spare a moment for her. And now, with Anna gone, Amanda realized the painful truth. She had been living in a marriage that was unfair, one-sided, and ultimately unkind. Amanda had always told herself that she was strong, that she could handle it. She had spent years telling herself that her love for her family was enough, that her sacrifices would be appreciated someday. But now, as she stood in the stillness of her home, it became crystal clear. Her love, her sacrifice, had never been enough to earn the respect she deserved. And then, just when Amanda thought she had found some sense of peace, the truth came crashing down once more. Dave, her husband, the man she had given everything for, continued to deceive her. As she prepared for what she thought would be a quiet family trip to heal, Amanda found out that Dave had been planning something entirely different. It wasn't just about the road trip he had promised her. It was about Elena. It was about keeping up the lie. The betrayal that Amanda had uncovered before had only been the tip of the iceberg. Despite her years of dedication and her quiet hopes for change, Dave had only grown more distant, more focused on Elena, his longtime friend. The realization hit Amanda hard. It was no longer about the lies or the years of feeling unseen. It was about the truth that Dave had never truly seen her at all. He had taken her loyalty and devotion for granted, believing that she would always be there, silently bearing the weight of their family's expectations. Amanda's exhaustion wasn't just physical. It was emotional and mental. The years of being ignored, overlooked, and undervalued had taken a toll on her spirit. The love she had poured into her family felt wasted, and the relationship she had once cherished now felt like a cage she had built for herself. The cost of her silence, her constant sacrifices, was far higher than she had ever imagined. Sometimes, the price of silence and sacrifice in a relationship is more than we can afford. We tell ourselves that staying quiet, bearing the burden, is a sign of love and strength. But over time, this silence can eat away at us, leaving us feeling lost, exhausted, and invisible. Amanda's breaking point came when she realized that she could no longer keep quiet, that she had to take action in order to change the course of her life. For the first time in years, Amanda stood before the mirror and saw herself clearly. It wasn't just the reflection staring back at her. It was the person she had buried under the weight of endless sacrifices. She had spent so long giving herself to others, putting her needs last, that she had forgotten what it felt like to put herself first. But now, after years of giving everything to her family, the time had come for Amanda to rediscover her worth. It wasn't an easy realization. She had spent decades serving everyone around her. Her children, her husband, her mother-in-law. Amanda had become so wrapped up in their lives that she had lost track of her own. She had no hobbies, no interests beyond the home. She had neglected her health, her dreams, and even her own desires. And for years, she had accepted this as her role, her duty. But now, standing there in the quiet of the house, Amanda asked herself, "Is this really all I'm worth?" The answer that came was no. She had given so much of herself, but in doing so, she had forgotten that she too was deserving of love, care, and respect. She started small. She began to take care of herself in ways she had long neglected. Amanda picked up a book she had always wanted to read but never had the time for. She went for long walks around the neighborhood, savoring the solitude and the fresh air. Slowly but surely, she began to reclaim her life. These little actions, these small acts of self-care, started to rebuild the woman she had once been. She remembered the joy she felt when she was independent, when she didn't live to fulfill the expectations of others, but for herself. It wasn't just about physical care. It was emotional too. Amanda learned to speak up for herself, to set boundaries. She stopped accepting the way her family treated her, no longer allowing herself to be the invisible woman in the background of their lives. She confronted Dave, no longer the meek, silent wife she had once been. Amanda was no longer afraid to say what she needed, to demand respect, to stand tall and be heard. Real-life stories of women in their later years who have reclaimed their lives are abundant. Take, for example, the countless women who, after years of raising children or taking care of others, have found their voice in midlife. They return to school, travel the world, start new businesses, and chase the dreams they had set aside. Women like these prove that it's never too late to rediscover who you are and to live your truth. One such example is Susan, a woman in her 50s who had spent her entire life as a homemaker. When her children left for college, Susan found herself adrift. She realized she had been so busy taking care of everyone else that she had neglected her own happiness. After some soul-searching, Susan took a painting class, something she had always dreamed of doing but never had the time for. Today, Susan is a successful artist, traveling to exhibitions and enjoying a new chapter in her life that she never thought possible. Amanda's awakening was not without its challenges. She faced guilt. Guilt for taking time for herself, guilt for no longer being the perfect wife and mother she had strived to be. But over time she learned to let go of these feelings. She understood that self-care wasn't selfish. It was necessary. If she didn't care for herself, how could she expect anyone else to? We must recognize our own worth. For so long, Amanda had given herself away to others without taking the time to nourish her own soul. But the truth is, we all deserve love, care, and respect, not just from others but from ourselves first. When we realize our own value, we stop letting others control our lives. We take charge of our own happiness and live in a way that is authentic to who we are. Amanda's decision to leave behind the life she had known was a bold one. For years, she had lived in the comfort of routines, where her role as a wife, mother, and caregiver defined her existence. But now, with everything she had experienced, Amanda knew that it was time to step outside her comfort zone, time to explore the world on her own and discover who she truly was, without the weight of family expectations. At first, the idea of traveling alone was daunting. Amanda had always been the one who took care of others, never thinking of herself as someone who deserved time alone, let alone an adventure. The thought of venturing into the unknown, of navigating a world without the security of her family, sent waves of doubt through her. She wondered if she was too old, too inexperienced, or if she would feel lonely on her own. But something inside her clicked. She remembered the words of an old friend. "You'll never know what you're capable of if you never step out of your comfort zone." That was the moment Amanda realized. She could no longer live in fear of the unknown. She had spent too many years holding herself back, worrying about what others might think, and it was time for a change. She booked her first solo trip, a small adventure to a nearby town, just a few hours away. Amanda had no grand plans, no expectations, just a desire to see something new. As she packed her bags, she felt a strange sense of excitement mixed with fear. But as soon as she set foot in that new town, Amanda felt a wave of peace wash over her. The quiet streets, the unfamiliar faces, and the absence of anyone who knew her made her feel like a blank slate. For the first time in years, Amanda wasn't defined by her roles as a wife or mother. She was simply Amanda, a woman free to be herself. As she wandered through the town, she visited local cafes, talked to strangers, and found small, peaceful spots to sit and think. The simple act of being alone, without the pressure of family obligations or expectations, gave Amanda a sense of freedom she had never experienced before. She began to realize how much she had been holding back in her own life, how much she had denied herself for the sake of others. In the evenings, Amanda would find a quiet park or a cozy corner in a bookstore, allowing herself to read or reflect on her journey. It wasn't just about seeing new places. It was about discovering new parts of herself. She learned to trust her instincts, to follow her curiosity, and, most importantly, to be comfortable in her own company. This journey was just the beginning. As Amanda continued to travel, she gained confidence. She learned to embrace the solitude and found joy in the little moments, watching a sunset over a quiet beach, sitting in a bustling cafe, listening to the stories of travelers from all walks of life. Every step she took was a step toward reclaiming her independence and embracing the freedom she had longed for. Amanda's journey is a reminder of something many of us often forget. You don't need permission to live your life. So many women, especially those who have spent years taking care of others, feel that their needs are secondary. They feel guilty for wanting something for themselves or fear the unknown. But the truth is, when we step out of our comfort zones, we often find our greatest strength. The common mistake many make, especially women, is allowing the fear of being alone or the fear of judgment to stop them from living their truth. Amanda had feared these things too, but by facing her fears head-on, she began to see that the world was much bigger than she had ever imagined. She was capable of much more than she had allowed herself to believe. Sometimes, in order to find true happiness and freedom, we have to leave behind the safety of what we know and take the leap into the unknown. It's not easy, and it takes courage, but the rewards are immense. In the quiet moments of solitude, Amanda found a new sense of peace and self-worth, things she had been searching for all her life. I know many of you might be feeling a mix of emotions right now. Anger, sadness, maybe even a sense of relief for Amanda as she begins to find herself again. Her journey is one that many of us can relate to, whether we've been in her shoes or seen someone else struggle with the same choices. What do you think? How would you have felt if you were in Amanda's position? Would you have stayed and continued to care for your family? Or would you have made the brave choice to break free and start anew? Take a moment and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you would react, and maybe even what you've learned from Amanda's story. Your insights and feelings are important, and this is a space where we can all reflect together. When Amanda made the decision to change her life, it wasn't just about her. It was about the family she had spent decades building, the family she had always put first. For so long, she had lived in the background, supporting her husband and children while sacrificing her own needs. But now the decision was made. She would no longer stay silent. She would no longer be invisible. She would stand up for herself for the first time in her life, and make the bold choice to walk away from a marriage that had taken so much from her. The moment Amanda told Dave that she wanted a divorce was, in many ways, the beginning of a new chapter. But for her family, it felt like the unraveling of everything they had known. Dave, still so comfortable in his routine, was blindsided by her decision. He had taken her for granted for so long that the idea of losing her was unfathomable. His initial reaction was disbelief, mixed with a touch of frustration. "Jody, you're being unreasonable," he had said, his voice thick with the shock of the unexpected. "This is just a phase, right? You don't really mean this." But Amanda was firm. She had made up her mind, and no matter how hard Dave tried to convince her otherwise, she wasn't turning back. His guilt and anger only heightened as he tried to find ways to dismiss her decision. He didn't want to face the truth that he had been neglecting her for years, and now it was too late. Meanwhile, Nelson and Daisy, Amanda's children, were equally stunned. They had always relied on Amanda to be there for them, supporting them through thick and thin, always putting them first. They were used to the idea of a mother who was endlessly available, always giving, always sacrificing. The idea that she would put herself first was foreign to them. In their eyes, she was simply the one who served, the one who made their lives easier. They had never stopped to consider how much their mother had given up for them, how little they had done in return. "Mom, this isn't like you," Nelson had said, his voice filled with confusion. "What about us? What about the family?" Daisy, always more reserved, didn't speak up at first, but her silence was telling. She couldn't understand why Amanda, who had always been the picture of selflessness, would choose now to break free from everything she had known. To them, Amanda's decision felt like a betrayal. They couldn't grasp why she would choose to walk away from a family that still needed her. Amanda, however, knew deep down that this was not just about her. This was about her family recognizing her worth. Her years of sacrifices, her constant devotion, none of it had ever been truly valued. Her children, who had grown up with everything they needed, had taken her presence for granted. And Dave, who had expected her to always be there in the background, had never fully seen her for the person she was. This situation isn't unique to Amanda's family. There are countless stories of individuals, especially women, who, after years of self-sacrifice, decide to take a stand for their own happiness. In many of these stories, the families initially resist the change. They can't understand why someone would choose their own well-being over the needs of the family. But over time, as the changes set in and the consequences of ignoring the person who has been silently giving so much become clear, families begin to realize what they've lost. Take, for instance, the story of Linda, a woman in her 50s who spent years in a marriage where she felt unseen and unappreciated. After her children had grown and left home, she made the decision to leave her husband. At first, her children were devastated. They couldn't understand why she would leave a marriage that, from their perspective, had been stable. But as time passed, Linda's children began to see their mother's strength, her independence, and her newfound happiness. They realized that their mother had been carrying the emotional load for years, and her decision to take charge of her life wasn't a betrayal. It was an act of self-love that allowed her to finally live on her terms. Change is often met with resistance, especially when it disrupts the status quo. Families are not immune to conflict when a member decides to make a life-altering decision. But sometimes, the most difficult choices are the ones that ultimately lead to healing. In Amanda's case, her decision to seek happiness, to stand up for her own needs, forced her family to reevaluate their treatment of her. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary for them to see the value of the love and sacrifice she had always given them. Amanda's decision to divorce Dave was just the beginning of a battle she never expected to fight. What she thought would be a peaceful separation turned into a drawn-out, bitter legal struggle. Dave, still clinging to his old life, used every tactic in the book to delay the divorce and minimize what he owed Amanda. It wasn't just about money. It was about control. He wanted to maintain the life he had known, to avoid the consequences of his actions, and to keep Amanda in the background where she had spent so many years. But Amanda wasn't backing down. The first few weeks of the divorce were filled with tension. Dave tried to use his connections, pulling strings to delay the proceedings. He was convinced that Amanda would eventually give up, as she always had. After all, hadn't she spent decades silently accepting whatever came her way? But Amanda had changed. She was no longer the woman who kept quiet, who sacrificed her needs for the family. She was no longer willing to let her life be dictated by Dave's whims. In their first meeting with the lawyer, Amanda sat across from Dave, feeling the weight of the years they had spent together. But this time, she wasn't filled with the same sense of helplessness. As the lawyer discussed the division of assets, property, investments, and savings, Amanda could see Dave trying to manipulate the situation. He wanted to minimize the amount he had to give her, to make her feel like she wasn't entitled to anything more than a small settlement. He argued that she had contributed little to the family finances, that he had built everything with his own efforts. But Amanda wasn't intimidated. She knew her worth. She knew that her years of taking care of the family, of sacrificing her own dreams and career for the sake of everyone else, had value. She spoke up. She reminded the lawyer of her sacrifices, of the emotional labor she had put into the family. She demanded what was rightfully hers. In the months that followed, the battle intensified. Dave continued to drag his feet, trying to delay the process and make things as difficult as possible for Amanda. He tried to manipulate their children, turning them against her and using guilt as a weapon. But Amanda stood firm. She didn't let his tactics affect her. She remained focused on the end goal: a fair settlement, a new beginning, and the opportunity to finally take control of her life. The legal battle dragged on, but Amanda's strength only grew. She was no longer the woman who had silently suffered for the sake of others. She was a woman determined to reclaim her life, to rebuild from the ground up. Her lawyer admired her resilience, her refusal to back down in the face of adversity. Real-life examples of women who have fought and won similar battles are not hard to find. Take the case of Melinda Gates, who, after her divorce from Bill Gates, went on to become one of the most influential women in the world. During her divorce, Melinda fought for a fair share of the couple's wealth, and her decision to speak up not only helped her secure her financial independence, but also gave her the platform to continue her philanthropic work. Melinda's story is a testament to the power of women who refuse to be silenced in the face of adversity. In another case, the famous actress Nicole Kidman fought a lengthy legal battle after her divorce from Tom Cruise. During the divorce proceedings, Kidman stood firm in her demands for a fair settlement and won a significant portion of their shared assets. Her determination during the legal process was a crucial moment in reclaiming her independence and securing her financial future. Sometimes the hardest battles in life are the ones that lead to the greatest rewards. Amanda's journey through the divorce was painful, but it was also empowering. She realized that, while the process was difficult, it was necessary. She was standing up for herself, protecting her rights, and proving that she was worthy of everything she had sacrificed for. After the legal battle and the emotional toll of the divorce, Amanda found herself standing at the precipice of an entirely new life. For the first time in years, she wasn't defined by her role as a wife or a mother. She was simply Amanda, a woman who had rediscovered her independence and was determined to live life on her own terms. At first, the freedom was overwhelming. Amanda had spent decades taking care of others, and now, with her children grown and her marriage behind her, she had the space to truly think about what she wanted. No longer burdened by the constant responsibilities that had once filled her days, Amanda took a step back to reflect on what had been missing in her life. She began by taking small steps toward reclaiming her happiness. She enrolled in a local arts and crafts class, a simple way to begin rebuilding a life she could call her own. Amanda had always loved painting, but her old life had never allowed her the time or space to pursue such interests. Now, with a little free time on her hands, she picked up a paintbrush and allowed herself to reconnect with a part of herself she had long neglected. The first few weeks were challenging. Amanda was out of practice, and her confidence wavered as she struggled to create something she was proud of. But with each stroke of the brush, she began to rediscover the joy that had been missing from her life. She found peace in the creative process, in the quiet moments spent immersed in her art. But Amanda didn't stop there. She knew that, in order to truly rebuild her life, she needed to step outside her comfort zone even further. So she started attending local meetups, seeking out new friends and connections. It had been so long since she had allowed herself to simply enjoy the company of others, free from the obligations of family life. At these meetups, Amanda met people from all walks of life, other women who had also struggled with their own journeys of self-discovery and independence. Some were in the same place she was, trying to start over, and others had already found their footing and were eager to share their stories. Amanda quickly realized that she wasn't alone in her journey. She heard stories of women who had reinvented themselves after divorce, after raising children, and even after facing health challenges. Each story was a reminder that, while the road to rebuilding might be difficult, it was always possible. One woman Amanda met, Sarah, had spent years raising her children and caring for her family, just like Amanda. When her children left home, she felt lost and unsure of what came next. But Sarah had taken up knitting, a hobby she had always wanted to try, and eventually started her own business selling handmade scarves and sweaters. She was living proof that it was never too late to start anew. Amanda felt a spark of inspiration. She too could rebuild her life. She could take her love of painting and turn it into something meaningful. Over time, Amanda's art grew, and she started showcasing her paintings at local galleries. She joined a community of artists, attended workshops, and even began teaching painting classes to others who, like her, were looking for a way to rediscover their passion and creativity. In addition to her artistic pursuits, Amanda found herself taking long walks along the beach, something she had always dreamed of doing but had never allowed herself the time for. The sound of the waves crashing, the scent of the salt in the air, and the peaceful solitude gave Amanda a sense of freedom and clarity she had never known before. Slowly but surely, Amanda's life was transformed. The woman who had once felt invisible, forgotten, and trapped in a life that didn't honor her, had become someone entirely different. Someone who was finally living for herself, someone who was building a life from scratch and finding joy in the process. Every ending is a new beginning. Life doesn't stop just because we face hardships or loss. While the journey of rebuilding can be long and painful, it is also filled with opportunities for growth, joy, and rediscovery. Amanda's story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of reinvention. Amanda had never anticipated that the price of her freedom would come with such a heavy emotional toll. After the divorce, when she first embarked on her journey of self-discovery, there was a sense of exhilaration, a feeling of liberation, of finally breaking free from the chains that had bound her for so long. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Amanda began to feel the weight of the emotional costs that came with her newfound independence. The first and most difficult loss was the emotional distance that had begun to grow between her and her children. Nelson and Daisy, who had once been the center of her world, now seemed to drift farther away. In the beginning, they were angry with her decision to divorce Dave. They couldn't understand why she would tear their family apart, why she would walk away from the life they had all known. But as time passed, their anger turned into indifference. They had their own lives to lead, their own concerns to focus on, and Amanda, for the first time in her life, found herself standing alone. It was heartbreaking for Amanda to watch. She had given everything to her children. She had sacrificed her own needs for theirs, and now it felt like they no longer had space for her in their lives. She missed the days when they were young, when they would run to her for comfort, when their world was centered around family. Now, it was as if they had moved on without her. She felt the loneliness of being a mother who had been forgotten, a woman who had devoted her entire life to her family, only to find that her place in their lives had been taken for granted. The quiet house echoed with emptiness. There were no more rushed mornings or dinners filled with chatter. Instead, Amanda's days were filled with solitude, times of reflection, but also deep yearning for the connection she had lost. The emotional cost was not just about losing her family's closeness. It was also about the loneliness of not having a partner by her side. After years of feeling neglected by Dave, it was strange to be free from the constant tension. But now, Amanda faced the loneliness of not having anyone to share her days with. The bed, once shared with a man who had long since stopped seeing her, was now empty. The nights were quiet, and the mornings felt longer without someone to greet them. She missed the companionship, the shared moments that come with having a partner, no matter how flawed that partnership had been. But the loneliness wasn't just about missing the company of others. It was about the quiet moments when Amanda realized how much of herself she had sacrificed to keep her family together. She began to question if she had waited too long to embrace her own happiness, if she had spent too many years trying to please others at the cost of her own joy. In those moments, Amanda struggled with regret and doubt, wondering if her pursuit of freedom had been worth the price. This is a common experience for many who go through divorce or experience significant loss in their family. It's easy to romanticize the idea of freedom without fully understanding the emotional cost that comes with it. We often hear of people celebrating their newfound independence, but the truth is, the road to freedom is often paved with moments of pain, loss, and self-reflection. Many women, especially after spending years prioritizing the needs of others, find themselves lost and unsure when they finally take the time to put themselves first. However, as Amanda navigated this difficult period of loneliness, she learned an important lesson. The freedom she sought came with loss, but it also brought opportunities for growth. She began to realize that while the void left by her family's emotional distance was painful, it also allowed her to reconnect with herself. She had the time and space to focus on her own needs, to heal from the years of emotional neglect, and to rebuild her sense of self-worth. Sometimes it comes with painful consequences, losing people, relationships, and connections that once meant everything to us. But as Amanda learned, it is through these losses that we are often able to grow. The pain of losing her children's closeness and the loneliness she felt were reminders of the sacrifices she had made, but they were also part of her journey toward healing and independence. In the end, Amanda discovered that her true happiness came from within herself, and that once she had learned to care for her own heart, she could begin to rebuild the relationships she had lost, on her own terms. As Amanda sat by the window of her cozy seaside apartment, watching the waves crash against the shore, she couldn't help but reflect on the journey she had taken. A life that once felt dictated by the expectations of others had become one she had built for herself, brick by brick. Each step forward had been challenging, filled with moments of doubt and pain, but in the end, it had led her to a place she could finally call her own, a place of peace, purpose, and self-discovery. Amanda's transformation had been nothing short of profound. When she first made the decision to leave her marriage, she was filled with fear and uncertainty. The idea of starting over, of rebuilding her life from scratch, was daunting. But over time, she realized that the very things that had once seemed like burdens, the loneliness, the solitude, the challenges, were now the things that had shaped her into the woman she had always wanted to become. She had spent so many years caring for others, putting herself last, and living in the shadows of her family's needs. But now she was learning to put herself first. Amanda had learned that true happiness didn't come from fulfilling the expectations of others. It came from honoring her own needs, from carving out a space for herself in a world that had often overlooked her. She had once been a woman who felt invisible, a wife, a mother, a caregiver who gave without receiving. But now, she was someone who had learned to give to herself. She had learned the power of self-care, the importance of nurturing her own passions, and the freedom that comes with owning her own choices. She had learned to say no, to set boundaries, and to embrace the beautiful chaos of living authentically. In the quiet of her apartment, Amanda realized that her journey had not just been about reclaiming her independence. It had been about discovering her worth. She had spent so much of her life trying to prove her value through the lens of others, by being the perfect wife, the perfect mother. But now, she knew her value wasn't tied to what others expected of her. It was tied to who she was in her essence. She was worthy simply because she existed. And through it all, Amanda had learned one of the most important lessons of all. Life isn't always fair. There were things she had lost. Her marriage, the closeness with her children, the family life she had once envisioned. But in the face of those losses, she had found something much more precious: herself. Her journey was not just about the pain of separation or the struggle of starting over. It was about the wisdom she gained through those trials. Amanda's path had been difficult, but it had led her to a place where she no longer needed validation from anyone else. She was enough, she was strong, and she was free. Amanda's legacy wasn't about the things she had done for others. It was about the strength she found in herself. It was about the courage to change, to face her fears, and to create a life that honored her true self. Her story was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of reclaiming one's life. Life may not always be fair, and the road to self-discovery can be painful. But in the end, it is through strength and perseverance that we find our way. We all have the power to reshape our lives, to start anew, and to live authentically, no matter the challenges we face. Amanda's legacy is one of courage, self-love, and the unshakable belief that it's never too late to build a life that is truly your own. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Amanda's story. I hope it resonated with you as much as it did with me. The powerful lesson here is that we should never lose sight of our own worth, no matter how much we give to others. Sometimes we need to stop and ask ourselves, are we truly living for ourselves, or are we merely existing for others? Amanda's journey teaches us that it's never too late to make a change, to reclaim our happiness, and to walk our own path towards self-love and independence. What are your thoughts after hearing her story? How did it make you feel? I'd love to hear your reflections in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next one. We have many more inspiring stories to come, and I can't wait to share them with you. Thank you again for being here. Your support means the world.